And the political power panel who took us through our election coverage last night is back to talk about the results. Here with me are, again, Democrat Richard Lee, the Director of Communications for the Hall Institute of Public Policy and professor at Rutgers University, GOP strategist Susan Del Percio, founder of O'Reilly Strategic Communications, and Dr. Kostas Panagopoulos. He is Assistant Professor of Political Science and Director of the Center for Electoral Politics at Fordham University. Okay, moment of truth. Last night I asked all three of you who was going to win the governor's race in New Jersey. Take a look.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Right, I want quick predictions now. In the New Jersey governor's race, we'll go right down the line here. Let's start with you, Professor.
Can I predict the New York City mayoral race instead?
Yeah, that's easy. Yeah, no, you got to pick a winner in New Jersey. Who wins tonight?
I think Corzine squeaks by, but only by a very small margin.
Susan?
I think Christie may squeak by.
All right, and Richard?
I think Corzine's going to win by a small margin.
Okay, so we're 2-1 here.
Yeah.
Well, now.
This is why I never like to make predictions and go on the record for things like
Kostas,
this.
Why'd you get it so wrong?
Well, I'm not sure that we got it so wrong, right? I mean, the two of us who actually predict. I mean, this was a very close race. Exactly, it could have easily swung in the other direction, and I think, the voters. It's hard to judge what voters are going to do in the polling booth. I mean, look what happened in the Bloomberg race here in New York City when the polls had it at a 12-point margin. It was a 5-point margin. It's very difficult to figure out what they're going to do at the end of the day.
They weren't calculating the undecided. I mean, he kind of finished with what the poll said he'd get. It's just the undecided is broken the other direction, right? So why do you think you got it wrong, Richard?
Oh, I think we were looking at the polls. The polls had it neck and neck. I think the Daggett turnout was much less than we expected. And two things with the Daggett turnout. Not only was it less, but the people who did turn out for Daggett seemed like that they would have voted for Corzine if it was a two-person race.
Yeah, that was kind of a surprise, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. And Susan, you got 5 seconds to gloat.
Well, no, I think the interesting thing is we all said it was going to be a squeaker when, in fact, it actually wasn't. It was decided so early. I think that was probably the most surprising thing of the night. I think we all thought it could almost go either way, and it really was a rather decisive win, which is, very good news for the Republicans, frankly.
Well, let's talk about what's good news for the Republicans, what's good news or bad news for the Democrats right now in a much broader context here. Because is this, with the results yesterday across all the races in the country, is this something that the Obama administration better start worrying about, is it a rejection of the attempt to reform health care so dramatically and cap and trade and bailouts and huge deficits? Is that what we saw yesterday?
Well, I think there are lessons from yesterday for both parties, right? For the Democrats, I think, people are frustrated and they want to see action. They're tired of the same old politics that they rejected in the November election last year. For the Republicans, I think there are important lessons as well, which is that they do have the capacity to win and be competitive in this country, but they have to try to avoid situations like in New York 23 where the party basically cannibalizes itself. So there are important lessons for both parties.
We'll get to that in just a minute.
And I think when you're looking at the Obama effect or lack of it, there's 3 things to probably really consider. One, Obama proved that he can't bring his voters out. All of those new voters from last year, he wasn't able to deliver for Corzine. The other thing is he's been having nationally and obviously locally problems with independents, and whether it be on health care or other issues, the independents have been breaking away for him, and that's also bad news. And the other thing is that's very good news for Republicans is we have shown that we can win, and it's the money game, frankly. And now that money can be raised, when you see a win in New Jersey, it does affect New York, and that is good news for Republicans and bad news for Democrats.
Richard, this had to be a stinging defeat for President Obama because he made so many trips to New Jersey to campaign for John Corzine.
Yeah, he's certainly extended a lot of political capital, and I think it's certainly a wake-up call for the Obama administration. They realize that he did not have the influence to, take some of the popularity that he had a year ago, and that didn't translate into, large, Democratic margins in the counties that he carried last year.
So the independents clearly had to be the key in yesterday's election, and the independents were the key to the Democratic victory in 2008. So are the Democrats really losing them, Richard? Are they losing the independents back to the Republicans now?
I don't know if you can read that into this one election, but I think certainly, if you look at the demographics in New Jersey, there's such a large block of independent voters. There's no way Chris Christie could have won without tapping, into that and doing very well with those independents.
But it does follow a national trend. I mean, we've seen Obama's numbers have gone down because independents have been breaking away. And I think in the Northeast, you see a lot of independents who are, frankly, a lot of Republicans who maybe didn't want to be associated with being a George Bush Republican who really became independents, but on fiscal issues, they're going to break for the Republicans.
Let's talk about the issue that Kostas brought up a second ago, and that was what happened in New York's 23rd, which is the party sort of cannibalizing itself. And it may have happened in Nassau County, too. I don't know. You had a very tight race in Nassau County. It's not going to be decided for a while. There's a recount going on there. But the Republican challenger is within 200 votes of beating, according to the initial count, beating the Democratic incumbent. But there was an independent in the race who siphoned away votes from the Republican side, a conservative running.
But I think that was surprising on Nassau. I mean, frankly, a lot of people did not see that coming. The Republican candidate was not as strong as people had intended, and I think in that case you saw a vote against the executive, again, a vote for change, that they were against the person having the office. A lot of ways the way it affected Corzine. When you compare it to the 23, which was an open seat, you really saw Republicans just killing themselves and handing the Democrats a win. The Democrats did not win the race as much as the Republicans lost it.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that, but I would say there's a real battle going on for the soul of the Republican Party right now, and the party's going to have to figure out which direction it wants to go in and do so soon before we get into the heat of the 2010
Respectfully,
election.
I'll kind of disagree with you a little bit, only because when you use the 23rd as the example, the fact is that you had a Republican who was a social liberal and a fiscal liberal. As long as you're fiscally conservative as a Republican, you don't have to worry about so much the heart and soul. You had the wrong
Susan,
candidate.
because of time constraints, you've had to get the last word. We'll even it out next time around, I promise, guys. All right, Richard, Susan, Costas, thank you very much.
Thank you.
In Nassau County, we're talking about that. It could be December before voters know which candidate they've actually elected to run local government there, the man who's got the job now or his challenger. Tim Minton reports on a race with no loser, no winner.
With the race for top Nassau boss close to a dead heat, voting